Excuse me, before we start, just a reminder to everybody with our sign language interpreters to please speak clearly, slowly so that they can understand you, and everything then will just be perfect. And Tracy will be able to understand you as well. Thank you very much. Chairman?
Morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call to order the regular scheduled meeting of Chicago Transit Board for December 11, 2019. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes, sir. Reverend Miller.
Here.
Mr. Irvine.
Here.
Ms. Alvarez-Alice.
Here.
Judge Chevrolet.
Here.
Reverend Jakes.
Here.
Director Silva.
Here.
Chairman Peterson.
Here.
We have a quorum of the board with all 7 members present, sir.
Thanks, Greg. The first order of business today is a presentation by the Citizen Advisory Board. Mayor?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and President Carter, members of the CTA Board. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to report to you this morning on the Citizens Advisory Board. I'm the mayor of the village of Skokie, one of the beneficiaries of your good work. The board continues to meet on a quarterly basis to hear presentations on a variety of issues confronting both CTA management and its customers. Topics that we've discussed include finances, operations, security, cleanliness, service, planning, and a host of other issues. Just this morning, we had a comprehensive presentation on your RPM modernization program. I could still be there talking, but we needed to be able to give you this update. It's a very impressive project, and I think it's going to have a great benefit to the communities on the red and purple lines. We look forward to continuing to work with the staff to enhance planning and service of the CTA. And if I may, just as a personal aside, as the mayor of Skokie, I would like to let you know about how the CTA service has had an impact on us. As you may know, about 5 years ago, we opened a downtown CTA station. I believe it was the first brand new station in the CTA system in about 20 years. It was designed with the CTA in the village as a transit-oriented development. It has a major impact on us. Abutting the station is the Illinois Science and Technology Park. I'm happy to tell you today that the park, which is over 500,000 square feet of science laboratory, we're completely leased out. We have a nice problem. We have to find new space because a lot of our 20 companies want to expand. We are now building another 140,000 square feet, and we are making plans beyond that. The CTA station in the downtown was integral to getting it done. Just to give you a very simple example, we've designed the park to attract iBio and nanotechnology companies from around the world. We have companies from New Zealand, we have some from Germany, and other parts of the world, including Canada. When Vetter Pharma opened in the park about 8 years ago, Mr. Vetter came in from Ravensburg, Germany, to open what at that time was a relatively small operation. After exchanging pleasantries, first question that Mr. Vetter asked me was, "So where's the train station going to be?" Took him upstairs, walked over the pedway and pointed. "Downstairs, take a look. Right out there in that old abandoned rail is going to be a brand new station." So I asked him, "Actually, why is that the first question you asked me?" And he said, "All of our scientists probably are going to come from Lincoln Park, Wicker Park. They do not want, millennials don't want to drive. And the first question they were getting from their potential employees was, how can I get to the park without driving? Can I ride my bike? more importantly, can I take the train? So the train station has been integral, and whenever new developers come in, our sales pitch surrounds the tech park as well as the train station. And I'll end with this. I could go on, by the way, but I'll end with this. I know you have a full agenda. Recently, we opened an adult gaming emporium called Ignite. It's based in the city of Chicago. They opened a second site right across the street from the downtown CTA station. 18,000 square feet where millennials, I go in there, I don't play games, but I go over for different functions. 18,000 square feet of what had been a warehouse that was abandoned has now been repurposed. And when I asked Flavius Maximus, the young fellow entrepreneur, early 30s, why did you build here? Skokie isn't known for its adult gaming. He said, across the street, that CTA station, all of our customers will be coming north side of Chicago, maybe some from the west side, but they all get here by Uber, or the CTA. Our biggest problem has been finding space for them. And it's directly from your work on that CTA station. So, as I say, it could go on. I won't. Thank you. Appreciate everything you do.
Well, Mayor, thank you. First of all, as you said, the two things you mentioned are great problems to have.
Yes, they are.
And the other thing I want to do is to thank you and the other members of the advisory board for volunteering in all of your work. I mean, I can't thank you enough. Want to wish you happy holidays, and hopefully I'll get out there to see that station. I know when it was built, because I've been board chair for 10 years, so I know I recall it coming before the board, but I'll get an opportunity to come out and take a look at it.
I'd love to show you around, because we have the Dempster Street station also. And that was one of the first in the system that went through the remodeling. And it's fully functional and doing very well. So, and of course, you have marvelous bus service.
Where's the station located?
The downtown station is Oakton and Skokie Boulevard, northwest corner. And then there's a CTA station, which is around Bronx. I could go on there. New Target opened, right on Dempster, which literally abuts the station. And we have designed it so you can get off the station, walk through the CTA lot right into Target.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, in Target, of course, it's not just clothing anymore, it's also groceries. and
Yes,
so on
full
and so forth.
service. Yes, full service.
So, yeah, you can go over it. You'll see people rush hour in the evening walking over, and you'll see them walking out with the Target bags with milk and bread and so on.
Thank you,
Keep up
Mayor.
the good work,
All
and
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it.
Hold on one second.
Our next order of business is public comment. Greg?
Yes, sir. We have one public comment speaker. We did have another one, but she couldn't make it, so I would ask now Ms. R. Jean Pugh to step forward. Ms. Pugh, if you would like to step right up into the area there and address the board. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Arjune Pugh, and this tale is getting a little stale because I've had to tell it so much. Last Tuesday, Tuesday of last week, December 3rd, I was on the Hosted number 8 bus, and I boarded at Madison and Hosted, and I was departing at North Avenue in Hosted. So I stood up, and the bus was crowded to capacity, so I couldn't see everything. When I stood up to depart, and I put my hand on the rail, the door smashed into my hand and compressed it almost to the point of breakage. And mind you, I'm right across from the operator. So I started yelling for her to please release the door because I could feel it was the most excruciating pain I ever felt in my life. And then a man next to me started yelling, close the door to release the pressure. And finally, 2-3 minutes, she did. So I then asked her if there was a possibility of an incident report. Could we do that? She said no. She said the only thing I could do for you is to call the police or the fire department, paramedics. So I said, well, no, and it was like 100 people on the bus. I didn't want to delay the people anymore. So I thought to myself, the next day I'll file a police report and then I'll file a report here on site. I knew immediately why that happened. The new buses, well, let me back up just a little bit. The next 2 days, I rode all around Chicago looking at bus models. The newest model has no safety gap between the rail and the door. All the other older models the first model had 1.5 feet. The next model, they shrink it down to only a half foot. The new model, none. How do I know it's the new model? Every bus design has a different fare mechanism box. So you can tell the different models by the fare box. So I don't think the operator was at fault. I think it was the model of the door. So then I ride around and talk to different bus drivers. And I asked them about safety issues. And one driver told me, you're not supposed to cross the yellow line. I said, I never saw the yellow line before. And if it's crowded, people crowd sometime all the way up to the door. So I said, how come there's no sensor or alert, no audio alert, no sensor alert, no color alert, red or yellow, that you can't put your hand there? That's it. Oh, the second part of my issue, how do you document an incident? I still don't know.
Well, while you're here, if you haven't filed one, we will absolutely have staff meet with you after this meeting to take an incident report. The other thing,
the same day or the next day.
well, there should be a number, and I'll let Dorval sort of speak to this. So that should have been able to take place the day of the incident, but I'll let President Carter speak to the process and also how we're going to follow up in terms of looking
I
at the
came
issue.
here the next day, on site here.
You came to the
The
headquarters
next morning,
here.
yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to find out.
Well, first of all, I know that. I believe that someone from CTA has reached out to you to talk to you about this incident.
She did, Miss Miller.
Yes,
Yeah,
and I want you to.
I'm
I'm going to
working
have
with
you
her
follow
now.
up with her immediately afterwards. Our normal procedure is if something happens, the customer is injured, there is a protocol that requires the operator to inform the CTA office of that immediately, and that we immediately have a report of it. We also can send an ambulance or something to deal with it. I don't know what specifically happened in your particular case, and I apologize for the fact that it wasn't handled in accordance with our procedures, but we will follow up with you. I have Ms. Miller sitting back here who can talk to you and walk you through what you need to do to file the claim with CTA so we can address your particular injury.
Well, my main concern is other passengers. What are you going to do about the gap?
Well, that's what I was
missing.
going to say too. We probably
Well,
need to-
what we're doing right now is we're pulling the video to see what exactly happened to determine if there is some other issue we need to address. And if so, once again, my operations group, headed by Don Bonds, will look at it to see if there's some modification we need to make to the bus to address this concern. So we will follow up on that issue as well.
Ms. Pugh raised a couple of other issues in terms of just the crowding that sometimes forces people to move beyond the yellow line. Maybe
Yes.
there's some thought to, a video, a recording that speaks about the importance of staying behind the line. I'm just trying to think, because I can only imagine during rush hour where you're right, you get on and there's no one there, you can sort of see the bright yellow line, but if the bus is crowded, it might, folks might have cleared it out.
Yeah, unfortunately, as you know, sometimes on some of our buses, we will have what we refer to as crush loads, where people will be basically into the stairwell of the bus itself. While we certainly would prefer that not to be the case, clearly, the design of the bus and the bus doors is an area that we need to make sure is properly addressed, so that if there are customers in that area, they're not potentially subject to an injury in the future. So that's one reason why we're pulling the video from the bus itself to see what exactly happened, see where exactly this problem occurred, so that we can take whatever action is deemed appropriate to address it.
So I know Ms. Miller, who's going to take the incident report, is working with Ms. Pugh, but can she also continue to just stay in touch with her?
Yes. Yeah, I know that Ms. Miller's already reached out to Ms. meeting. We'll continue to follow up with her. We'll also get the appropriate people in our claims department who will follow up with her as well on her
Okay,
particular
there's
situation.
one more issue.
Yes, ma'am.
Each design, they shrink the bar. Each bus model has a different length. The latest model has the shortest length I've ever seen. It's only 1/3 of the first model. So a passenger is forced to put their hand closer to the door. The old model, you could stand in the back, and the door won't come in contact with you at all. But the new model, they shrunk it down to about right there.
Well, I appreciate you coming and making us aware of it. And as Dorval mentioned, President Carter mentioned, we will absolutely take a look and see what's going on, because we don't want this to happen to any of our passengers. And again, we apologize for the incident that took place in terms of your ridership on the bus.
And I was crying the next morning because I thought, what if that had been a child?
Yeah.
It would have been horrendous. But it was old me. So it wasn't quite as bad. But the compression was horrendous.
Well, thank you for coming down and
Okay.
taking time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Pugh, and that concludes the public comment section of today's meeting, sir.
Thanks, Greg. I will now entertain a motion to recess the regular board meeting so that the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee can meet.
So move.
A second.
Moved and seconded. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales.
Yes.
Judge Chevrolet.
Yes.
Reverend Jakes.
Yes.
Mr. Director Silva.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion to recess is approved with 7 yes votes. And then Chairman Silva, whenever you wish to start, we can start.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to call to order the December 11, 2019 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Will the Secretary call the roll?
Yes, Reverend Miller.
Here.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Director Alvarez-Rosales.
Here.
Judge Chevrolet.
Here.
Reverend Jakes. Director Chairman Peterson.
Here.
Chairman Silva.
Here.
The Finance Committee has all 7 members are present. We have a quorum of all 7.
Our first order of business today is the approval of the committee minutes on November 20th, 2019. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Will the Secretary call the roll, please?
Yes, Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
Director Alvarez-Rosales.
Yes.
Judge Chevrolet.
Yes.
Reverend Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
The minutes are approved with 7 yes votes.
Our next order of business is a review of the finance report presented Jeremy Fine. Good morning, Jeremy.
Morning.
I'm Jeremy Pine, your Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be reviewing the October results. With regard to October revenues, we see farebox totals down about 1.7 million. As we highlighted a little bit last month, there were several events occurring in October. Primarily, we had a line cut for O'Hare, as well as some other line cuts throughout the system. But we also had the CPS strike, as well as bad weather around Halloween. So the confluence of all of those events saw paper use in particular, but also the 7-day pass sales affected for the month of October. So we see farebox totals down about 1.7. We see passes down about 600,000. So overall, fare and pass totals were down for the month of October, $2.3 million. Reduced fare subsidy, as it's been over the past several years, has been cut in half, so we see that down $1.2 million. Non-farebox totals are up almost $3 million at 2.8, primarily driven by a non-capital grant revenue, which has a reciprocal non-capital grant expense. Total revenues for the month of October are down about $700,000. Average fare is down several pennies due to the computation of revenue over ridership, and then we see free rides slightly higher than what we saw last October, again due to line cuts and whatnot affecting the free rides. Year-to-date numbers follow the same form that we've seen over the past several months, where farebox totals are down about $12 million on a year-to-date basis. Passes, particularly the 7 and 30-day passes, have helped bolster the pass line by about $2.5 million. So fare and pass totals on a year-to-date basis are down about $9.5 million. Reduced fare subsidy, again cut by half, we're down 11.4 on a year-to-date basis, and non-farebox totals are up over $3.5 million. So overall, total revenues on a year-to-date basis are down about $17.3 million. But as we'll talk about on the expense side, we're more than able to cover the revenue shortfall with expense controls that we put in place. On the expense side, October expense essentially flat. Materials we see positive to the tune of almost $1.2 million. Fuel is slightly positive but essentially flat, and then power is positive by $1.3 million. Injuries and damages, security services are essentially flat, slightly positive. And then other expenses where we see the effect of the non-capital grant expense is still positive, but by about $200,000 for the month. So overall for October, we see operating expenses positive by almost $3 million. When you offset the shortfall in revenues of $700,000, we're left with a positive variance for the month of October of $2.2 million. On a year-to-date basis, we see positive favorability on all of the lines. So we end up with an aggregate year-to-date expense favorability of $30.6 million on a year-to-date basis. That more than offsets the shortfall that we see on the revenue side. So we have a net favorability of system-generated revenues versus expenses of $13.3 million. That $13.3 million helps us offset the shortfall that we see in public funding that comes from revenues being down on sales tax, PTF, and the real estate transfer tax. So we're, last month we were about $7.7 million unfavorable. This month with the positive variance here for October, we're about $6.5 million unfavorable overall. So again, we'll continue to whittle away that deficit through November and December, and we'll end up 2019 flat to budget. With regard to the three commodities that we purchase, fuel, power, and natural gas, we're looking for selective opportunities to purchase the remaining volumes for fuel and for natural gas, fuel for 2021 and natural gas for 2020 through 2022. Prices are ebbing a little bit, so we do expect to start seeing some additional purchases hopefully shortly.
Any questions?
Yeah, Jeremy, just, kind of looking ahead. I mean, when I take a look at September, same thing with October, couple of things were one-time events. I'll give you October, the strike. So we know that there's a 4-year contract in place, so we won't have that happen again. In the near future, hopefully. But I'm just trying to think of some of the things as we think about 2020, for example, service disruption. So I know with the influx or, the new capital, and you're able to you're sort of able to project a little bit, I think, from this year, because I think it was really this year. I don't know if we've had a lot of this, but how are you sort of looking kind of going forward at the service disruptions and their impact on our financials? I mean, we can't do anything about Uber, Lyft. We can't do anything. I've been surprised at how the low gas prices. I mean, they've been regular, probably under $3, and even premium has been about $3.79 for the past 6 or 7 months. Those things we can't control, but I was wondering, just kind of, looking out to 2020 budget, now that we've got an idea of some of the impact that service, disruption can have on our financials, are there any things kind of we're thinking about in 2020 to kind of mitigate some of it?
Absolutely. We did take into account the continuing capital improvement work. It's great news that we got a capital bill from the state. That has a reciprocal effect on the capital improvements being made with Bill Mooney and his team. We have worked with the infrastructure folks, with the planning folks, trying to assess what the potential impacts would be as partly experienced here in 2019 on ridership with regard to capital improvements. We did factor those into our projections with regard to ridership in the future months, so that we do have that to somewhat baked in. Obviously there can be surprises, but on the positive side, as we talked about a little bit with the budget, we did not factor in a potential ridership benefit from any type of action that the city may take or has taken with regard to the rideshare tax. So that should be a positive momentum for us as well. That was not baked into the revenue estimates as part of the budget.
Any other questions?
Not a question. I guess it's more just making sure that we're still on track. I know we've got about a $13 million in terms of expenses versus revenue, but we're on track to close the year with a balanced budget.
Yes, so we have about a $6.5 million gap right now, but again, based on our projections for November and December, we fully expect to be able to close that through the last 2 months of the year, so that we end up the 2019 budget flat to budget.
Any other questions? No questions. Our final order of business. Final order of business is the review of 7 purchase and sale award recommendations. Presenter is Ellen McCormick. And JP.
You know what? I just want to make a comment, I guess, to Jeremy and the whole team. Ending the year flat to budget or close to that. Thank you so much for everybody's hard work. I know it's such a team effort, and we really appreciate it. I know I do. So thank you. It's a good day.
Our first contract, number V1. Any questions?
No questions, but I think just another great job by the team. If you look at the original contract, it was about $2.5 million. This time around, we've been able to get it under $1,900,000. So again, I think kudos. Can you talk a little bit about how the staff was able to identify? I mean, in terms of, that's over almost $1 million something in terms of being able to whittle that down in terms of efficiencies. Can you just share with the board a little bit about some of the things you were able to do to lower the cost?
Sure. So what we did was, So what we did was we got the bids back, and they were significantly higher than what the estimate was to be. So we looked to see if what other bidders were out there. And one of the companies we saw that didn't bid was the company that had it last time. We know that good job, and we know they was significantly lower. So we reached out to
37,000.
Chairman, I'm sorry, I don't have that answer with me. Can I get that for you after
Yes,
the meeting?
absolutely.
Any other questions? Finally, contract number J1, any questions?
Well, before we get to J1, because I really think this is a big deal here, this $5 million contract regarding the drug and alcohol compliance. Ellen, can you just talk a little bit, you and Juan, about how that's going to operate? Kind of, how is that different, and how is this different than what we've had in place
Sure.
around testing and everything?
Okay, so we divided, previously the contract F2 and F3 were all one contract. And that limits the pool of vendors we can have, because they also have to be, have a certified testing lab. So it does list the number of players we can have. So a decision was made to break them up. And so it was broken up into collecting the samples and then actually testing the samples. As you'll see, for collecting the samples, we do have two firms. We have Pharmatech and Mobile Health and Testing Services. Pharmatech came in significantly lower than the current bidder and even Mobile Health and Testing. So Pharmatech, for example, for their urine testing, it's $35 per urine testing. Mobile Health came in at $55, and the current fee we're paying is $130. So it went down drastically. So the reason we have two vendors in there is because these are, when they have to go out, they have a window of 2 hours where they actually have to get out and do the testing. So the idea is that they'll go to Pharmatech first because they are significantly lower. When Pharmatech, on those occasions, they can't make it, then they would call Mobile Health. So they feel that having the two companies will really help them meet their...
Let me add to that too, Chairman, because one of the things that we looked at was sort of the history of this contract. And the history of this contract, since it's been awarded in 1995, it has been with the same vendor for testing and collection. So since 1995 to today, we've had the exact same vendor. So I think that's why, as Ellen highlighted, we said, how can we break this contract apart to create more competition and more opportunities? And that's why, rather than one contract for testing and collection, you're seeing two, one for collection and one for testing, to create that competition and create the opportunities, and then to create the savings, as Ellen highlighted, that delivers.
Additionally, we do have a DBE that's actually acting as a prime now, which is another...
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
We are in contract number J1. Any more questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place these 7 contracts on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Since there is no further business.
Hold it, let me take the roll call on the motion to put the contracts on the omnibus, sir.
Yes.
Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
Director Alvarez.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
Judge Chevrolet.
Yes.
Reverend Jakes. Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 7 yes votes.
So since there is no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend board approval of the omnibus?
We just did it, so we just need a motion to adjourn and we'll be done. Just
So
a motion. So we have a move for adjourn and a second, and all in favor?
May I have a second? Will the secretary call?
Say aye. So I guess we're adjourned from the meeting. Chairman, before you start, go back to board meeting, could I just have 1 minute? Thank you.
May I now have a motion to return to the open meeting section of today's board meeting?
So move.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
Director Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Judge Chevrolet.
Yes.
Reverend Jakes.
Yes.
Director Silva.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
Yes, we have the motions approved with 7 yes votes, but sir, before you proceed with the rest of the agenda, I would like to amend my statement that I made after the public comment section where I stated that that concludes the public comment section of today's meeting. Actually, according to the rules that govern our public comment section of the board, which is on our website, people have the option, if they cannot come to the meeting, to submit a written statement to the board. And Gregory Mantle emailed me a written statement, and so we don't need to read it, but I just want to put into the record that I have submitted those comments to each of the board members, and now that concludes the public comment section of today's meeting, sir.
And Greg, can you also make sure that the board is made aware of how we respond back? Because the one thing about being here, we're able, at least I am able to have some
Sure.
interaction with the public, when they come and raise an issue before the board. In this particular case, like you said, you will have it, you've submitted a copy of it to us, but I think it's important we know that Karen, or however it's responded to, that we're made aware of it.
Yes, sir. What we can do is we will make it a process. We'll make it a procedure that every public comment person who comes before this board, that by the next board meeting, even sooner if we have it, we will let each board member know how it was responded to. All right? All right, great.
All right, our next order of business today is the approval of the November 2019 board minutes. The minutes were previously distributed. Any comments? Hearing none, I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of November 20th, 2019.
So move.
Moved and seconded. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
Director Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Judge Chevrolet.
Yes.
Reverend Jakes.
Yes.
Director Silva.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
The motion to approve the minutes passes with 7 yes votes, sir.
Thanks, Greg. Next order of business is executive session. It is my understanding that there will be no executive session today, Karen. All right. The next order of business is board item number 6B, which finalizes the CTA's board 2020 schedule of the regular board meetings. May I have a motion approving a resolution setting the dates of the January, July, September, October, November, and December 2020 Chicago Transit Board regular meetings and the times of the February, November Chicago Transit regular board meeting.
So move.
Moved and seconded. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
Director Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Judge Chevrolet.
Yes.
Reverend Jakes.
Yes.
Director Silva.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion to approve the resolution passes with 7 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Silva.
Good morning. The Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier this morning. The committee reviewed the finance report and approved the committee's November minutes. The committee also reviewed 7 purchase and sales award recommendations. The committee approved all 7 purchases and sales awards, placed all of them on the omnibus for approval, and recommend board approval of the omnibus. That concludes my report, Chair.
Thank you, Director Silva. May I now have a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Silva?
So moved.
Second.
Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
Director Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Judge Chevrolet.
Yes.
Reverend Jakes.
Yes.
Director Silva.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 7 yes votes.
All right, the next order of business, the construction report, Bill, Chris, and Juan, I think.
Good morning. Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer, and with me today is? Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer, and with me today is?
Chris Bouchel, RPM Chief.
Juan Pablo Prieto, Director of Diversity Programs.
So we'll start with our East Lake, Milwaukee, Illinois substation upgrade. As I mentioned last month, all the equipment at East Lake is now currently handling our system on all brand new equipment. So the activities over the last month has been decommissioning the last pieces of the old traction power system that existed. So in here you see part of the rectifier transformer combination for lineup 1 in the process of demolition. And here are some of the last of the DC switchgear cubicles that are being removed as well. As has been the case kind of throughout this project, this equipment's being removed to create space for the last pieces of new equipment, which will be installed kind of in commission in this next upcoming month, which will be the last of the traction power equipment going in. Project remains on schedule and within budget. Our next project is our Your New Blue signal upgrades. Since we last talked, we had completed all the major kind of work for the season on our line cut activity. A lot of the activity has been kind of punch list coming out of those line cut weekends. This first picture shows you some compaction testing where they're setting up foundation for a signal pylon stand. Here they're doing some hydro excavation around one of the communication huts to create some openings to do some localized duct bank installation. Here they're installing that signal stand I discussed kind of in the first photo. This is for one of the I-bonds, which is communicates to the train speed and occupancy. The project remains on schedule and within budget. Here's kind of the last of, again, some little bit of localized work. Over the next couple months, they will continue to do some wiring and some preparatory work for the first of the signal houses, which we're expecting kind of in late winter, early spring. Next project is part of our Fast Tracks program, our Lake and South Main Line track improvement project. The work has continued on the South Main Line between 17th and 28th Street. Here is some demolition of the old footwalk that was in the center of the walkway. They're removing some ties that carried that footwalk in the picture. One picture on the left, and here is some installation of new ties on the Stevenson Expressway bridge deck. This next set of pictures, the first one shows you they're lining and gauging the running rails. This gauging setting the spacing between the two rails that allow the train to smoothly ride. And the picture on the right shows you the handrails being installed along the new footwalk. Our next project is our ballasted Ravenswood track project. The work since we last met focused on Francisco grade crossing. We had a fairly difficult weekend out there. This is modernization of the existing grade crossing. This will be the first installation of a concrete grade crossing that CT has ever used, which will give us a much longer longevity and duration. Here they're excavating for a duct bank under both the new tracks. Here they're setting these new prefab concrete panels. You'll see.
Before you move from the previous slide, just got a question. I see this vacant land. Was that all vacant, or did we acquire properties there to do this?
There is no acquisition of property. The vacant land you're actually seeing is the street itself.
Oh, okay.
So this is the middle of the roadway. So this is a grade crossing over Francisco and Manor Avenues. So Francisco and Manor split into two separate streets right here. So we have one street that kind of comes into two. So it looks a lot bigger than it is.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. This looks like
the one side is a little wider than the other side because it has two streets that feed into it, but it's all actually existing footprint of the street. Yeah, it is a very, very, very tight envelope, actually. And this picture's taken at the butt of a building. So it's like it looks a little wider than it is, but yeah. So back to this picture is you can actually see the snow coming down in this picture. This was a few weeks back when we had a pretty significant snow over the weekend and the temperature plummeted and it was pretty rough out there. They're presetting some concrete panels here. These were preformed concrete panels that will have a much longer life than the existing asphalt that we historically have used in our grade crossings. Here they're setting the rail into those preformed concrete panels. And then ultimately they pour in a concrete pad between the two sections of track to smooth out the center and tie them all together. And they're forming up for that. And here they're in the process of the pour. And then here's a completed concrete edge. Okay.
Before you move on, are you going to be doing the same thing at Kedzie?
So the last piece of work of this project is tied to Kedzie Station, and we initially had intended to have Kedzie grade crossing as part of that. We really struggled with this installation at Francisco, and so we decided to pull Kedzie out of it in the short term, and we'll be rebidding it as its own package in the future with the spring. We've gotten really deep into the weather of the season, and we really want to rethink the work because the contractor did struggle greatly administering it, and we really need to kind of repackage it.
Okay, so eventually, like the pedestrian crossing at Kedzie will be.
Our intention is to have all our crossings going forward in the same style of concrete, but especially our high traffic routes like Kedzie that you would see this. So, and I would expect hopefully to see that package coming out in the spring and providing you guys some updates towards summer.
And is there one additional line cut for this project?
There's one left weekend, which is for Kedzie Station, which has actually occurred at this point. So.
So you're done?
We provide you some final punch lists and stuff in next month's report, wrapping kind of the project together. But so.
Thanks.
So our next project is our electric bus chargers. As I've mentioned previous months, the activity has been focused around Chicago, Austin, and Chicago Garage. Last couple months, I've shown you kind of them enclosing this new substation out there, and here you can see the installation of some of the new equipment going in here. This is the high-grade traction power equipment you see similar in our rail substations for those quick charging stations. And here's the site preparatory work where they ultimately be pouring out the concrete and other forms. Some more site work, and then you can see the ventilation installation for heating of the equipment inside that facility. And here's some more of the traction power equipment there. And the picture on the right is for the depot charger at Chicago Bus Garage. We now have an active depot charger to charge the new electric buses as they come on site. This is a slow charging facility at this point. You just plug in the bus and will allow it to recharge over a 12-hour period. The Chicago Garage also does get a fast charging mast, and all the major equipment's in for that except for the mast. My last project is Grand Chicago Division Station renovations. Work continues at all three stations with the focus recently on Grand with platform closures and other station activities. The first picture is of Chicago and some mezzanine work here and the stairwell. The next series of pictures show you demolition under one of the weekend closures at Grand where they broke out the topping slab and the station platform and mezzanine. This is platform level work at Grand. We had a 54-hour closure of the station as well as a single track that allowed them to work on one half of the platform and bypass the station. Here is the pouring of the new concrete slab at Grand on that one half. And they also, under those closures, did do some water ejection grouting to stop leaks in the subway. This work was predominantly at Division. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Bill. RPM Phase 1, the design build contract, continues on time and on budget. Primary activities that are occurring right now are related to design, so we continue to design various elements of the project. Most particularly, we're completing the design on the bypass. My colleague Steve Hands today used the term just-in-time design. We continue to complete design ahead of construction. I think that's a really good way to think about it in a design build project. We are working on the pre-stage work, or the work that has to occur prior to the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr segment. That is predominantly two big interlockings that are being installed to either side of that segment of the work. So that design work is nearing completion as that work is starting. And then in general, on the construction side, we continue to put foundations in. We're roughly halfway done with some of the deep foundations or the caisson part of the deep foundations in the bypass, so that work is progressing successfily. You can see from some of the photographs the size of these foundations. They are significant. These are some of the biggest ones that we're in the process of constructing right now. As we get further north, we'll get into some smaller ones, but right now we're into the really big ones.
Chris, before you move to the next slide, I know when you open up talking about the project, you talked about being on time and on budget. Is most of the work now you can kind of work through the winter? I was just wondering, when Jeremy was giving the financial update, we talked about things beyond our control, cold weather. Is most of the work you're doing now in the first phase, are those things that you can pretty much work throughout the winter to keep the project on time, or are there conditions that can take place that might slow up the project?
I don't want to say there aren't impacts. Two things. One, yeah, there is really one season in Chicago, and that's construction season. We work throughout the year. But that said, weather can impact our efforts, especially extreme weather. And I think that one theme that I've certainly heard Jeremy talk about over the last couple of years is some of the extreme weather that we've seen. So it would be difficult, say, to do this particular operation if the weather was in double-digit negatives. Yeah. And it's less because of the ground temperature, and it's mostly because of the exposure twofold, one of our employees and contractors to the cold, And number two, some of the equipment, a lot of it is hydraulic equipment that the fluid that going through these machines gets colder and it has to work much harder to do its job. But Chairman, generally speaking, we work through anything. And as you can see from the next picture, if we can go, there's not a lot. This is actually a drill. You just see the dirt around the tines of the drill, but there's not a lot that stops this piece of equipment, and certainly not 4 feet of frozen
No,
ground.
I was looking at the workers.
Yeah.
That's what made me think about, the
Yeah.
extreme cold weather, the machinery, like you said, just kind of looking at some of the photos, I can see how that work could continue. But when you look at some of the men and the women who are working on the project, I was just wondering, is there a point where we say, guess what, today, like you said, if it hits double digits below zero, might be time to say, look, the exposure risk is such that we might want to put it off for a bit.
Absolutely. I will say the clothing is getting better. You didn't even recognize the picture of your chief infrastructure officer in one of the earlier photographs. We tend to bundle up pretty significantly when we're out there as we do promote that safety to our workers. But that said, there are some days, Chairman, they're just too cold to work. So continuing on, once we drill the hole, we put the steel into it. This forms the basis, structural basis for the caisson or the foundations of various pieces of work we're installing, in particular the first bridge that we're doing here at the bypass. But to kind of remind everybody, RPM is the largest signal project we've ever done as well. And we're introducing various pieces of new technology to our signaling system. Here is the testing of one of those pieces of technology that we're installing on the CTA system. We tend to be very incremental in our approach to safety-sensitive equipment. We're very careful with the design. And then when we install anything new, we go through a very detailed process of reviewing it, of installing it in test locations before we finally put it on the right-of-way. So this is kind of what you see here as part of that larger effort. We're going through a test procedure on some new track circuits. Further the same activity. So moving on to the advanced contracts, the utility, the demolition work, as we've talked about in previous briefings, is really in closeout, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. The advanced utility relocation is both tight to budget and schedule. Work continues, but not in a sense that has a likely impact on the larger design work to follow. It has been a challenging but successful effort in general. You can see from some of the photographs, they're really not that different from earlier pieces of work that we've discussed. We're digging various trenches. We're basically taking, as you know, utilities that are up in the air and we're putting them underground is the easy way to think about it. And in some cases, we have to replace or rebuild other things that are underground. Here is a manhole. And as well, you're very much aware of the fact that ComEd is our major partner in this effort. They're not the only utility, but they are the largest of the utilities involved. The work is progressing, though, despite the weather as well. So outreach is a huge effort. We are working diligently at it as the work starts for the various pieces of work ahead of the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr section. As I said, the installation of those two interlockings is starting. We're spending a lot of time with the various aldermen in those areas, Alderman Kappelman, Alderman Osterman, and their constituents, explaining the work, the impacts of the work, mostly in this context to the community, but also in terms of ridership that they can expect. We are doing a lot of other various types of outreach, everything from looking at smaller media outlets and working with them, to the Triangle Neighbors, which is a group in the area. We're working very closely with him and his office and the various folks there to when we're closing streets and doing other things as we're doing for some of the foundation work. And then finally, we've developed a real relationship with the Wilton Neighbors and just making sure that we keep that strong. That was a group that we were challenged with early, but kind of pulling together as a team, including President Carter, we were able to really open up communication and make sure that they understand exactly how the project is advancing and their impacts. And with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Juan Pablo to talk a little bit about the really great workforce and SBE efforts that we're collaborating on.
Thanks, Chris. Although the year is winding down and less events, we are still attending on the workforce side. we are planning on engaging with our new RPM workforce partners and put together the strategy starting next year to recruit, assess, and train individuals to get them into the building trades. We did attend a breakfast roundtable with Representative Robin Kelly talking about black women in the trades. China was there representing CTA, talking about the opportunities that there are here with our construction program. On the SBE DBE side, we held our third Building Small Business Program session. This is the session where DBE firms and potential DBE firms learn about building their financial capacity and maximizing their opportunities to use their existing equipment and contracts to grow the wealth and to grow as a business. So we had 12 attendees at that session. We look to host more sessions in the coming year, so we're strategizing as to where we should host them and when. This last session was held in the Austin neighborhood, and the community that came was very grateful that we came out to the west side, and we told them we would be back next year. So we're planning our sessions for next year now to continue that program.
Curious on the DB financial capacity sessions. What does that entail?
So we have it developed through two tracks. Walsh Floor put it in their proposal when they submitted for RPM, and we've also been working internally to find different access to capital for DBEs, since that was an issue about purchasing equipment, paying staff, paying union dues until they get that first pay app and the pay apps start rolling in. The sessions are with a banker that works through Walsh Floor. He says a reformed banker, former banker, and he comes in and talks about what is capital, what are the traditional access to capital points, the non-traditional, and how these DBEs can leverage their business assets to get more capital to grow as a business. From the orientation session, they break out into one-on-one sessions where they go over their individual business plans, their business finances, so he can give them strategies to how to maximize. Some have some credit repair to do, so we've partnered with List Chicago that has some credit repair programs. Some have some back taxes to take care of. Some are ready to put in a loan application, so he talks them through the different options that they can use to gain access to capital.
Oh, I thought that was great. It's very detailed. And that was the first one we had.
This is the third one now. Yes.
Are you seeing a lot of women?
It's a healthy mix of the owners coming in. We're doing more outreach. We're planning on doing them quarterly so that we have more time to spread the word about the events between each event. So far, we've done them monthly and seen a pretty good turnout, but we feel we can maximize more if we go to a quarterly session. And lastly, tomorrow we're hosting, Walsh Floor is hosting a meet and greet for electrical contractors and track contractors on the north side, just outside of the Wilson Station. And then it's a dual event. It'll have a workforce component as well. So contractors can come learn about opportunities with the electrical subprimes and the track subprime, and then individuals can come to learn about apprenticeship opportunities with Local 134, Local 9, and the Laborers Union.
Thanks. Any other questions for Bill, Chris, or Juan, Pablo? Let me, one of the things I know the directors got briefed on, I want to thank Steve and also Brian in terms of their communication efforts. Dorval and I were talking with the mayor of Skokie before the meeting started, and he talked about when people see investments in their community, they feel like their community is on the come up. You know, they're paying attention, they're investing. And I think when you're putting things in community newspapers where people go into laundromats and grocery stores and they see that, it gives them a certain pride and feeling about, oh, by the way, there are investments going on, the neighborhood's changing. So I really appreciate the effort from the communication team to make sure that our message is cascading down throughout the neighborhoods we're working in. And I think it's helpful because this is such a long project for the next 5 years that we, you over communicate what we're doing. And if people can see investments being made, they don't mind a little inconvenience. They know there's an end date, but I think constantly sharing with them and keeping them up to speed on what's going on. And like I said, I know we don't have listed here all of the community newspapers, but I get that from Brian and Steve in terms of how they're investing, whether it's the Citizen, West Side Voice. You've got the other one around the Tri-Taylor area. I mean, you've got so many community newspapers out here. So again, I wanted to just acknowledge their work as well as thank you guys for the things that you do as well. But I did want to highlight the communication aspect.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would thank you for pointing that out. And I know that both Steve, Brian, as well as Tammy Chase, who works directly with the RPM group, have worked very hard to make sure we're getting the message out to community newspapers. I also point out that we're not just focused on that for RPM. We're looking at opportunities to do the same thing on all sorts of initiatives and projects that we're doing at CTA. And as you have reminded me on more than one occasion, good news travels nowhere, bad news travels everywhere. So we're making a concerted effort to not just use the traditional forms of outreach to the media around what CTA is doing, but specifically targeting the community newspapers and making sure we're getting that information right down into the neighborhoods that we're trying to serve.
Excellent, thank you. Our next agenda item is new business. Greg, is there any new business?
Yes, actually there is. I believe that President Carter wishes to say something.
Thank you, Greg. As we get to the end of the year, I figure this is a really good time for me not only to reflect a little bit on what CTA has accomplished over the past year, but to also give you some insights into what I plan to pursue, particularly as it relates to innovation for the upcoming year. It's sort of what I view as an early Christmas present to both CTA board as well as our customers and employees of the things that we're working on. And I would start off by just pointing out this has been a pretty remarkable year for CTA in terms of accomplishments, not only in terms of the capital projects that we completed like 95th Street and Garfield, but also the beginning of the construction work on RPM, which was a major milestone for us to do. The now underway construction of rail cars for CRRC and our new rail car procurement on the far south side of the city, really starting to re-energize a plant and an activity that hasn't happened on the south side of this city for decades. It's also been an opportunity for me to focus on a new capital program. We are blessed with the support of the mayor and the governor to have the largest capital program in the history of CTA, which has, amongst other things, allowed me to invest in our upcoming 5-year capital program with over $300 million for Red Line extension to start to really make a project that has been under discussion for decades become a reality. So I think we've had, to put it mildly, a fairly momentous year at CTA. But as you know probably more than others, there's still a lot more to do. You certainly have seen the challenges that we continue to face in terms of our revenues, our fare box revenue in particular, and the ridership challenges that go along with that. And one of the things that I've really focused on and have really challenged my team to focus on are ways in which we can start to think innovatively about how we address all of that. And there are a number of initiatives that we're undertaking that I want to just give you a little peek behind the curtain, so to speak, of what's coming in the upcoming year that I think will be not only beneficial to our customers and to our ridership, but also to our employees as we continue to provide and improve the quality of the services that we provide to CTA and to the communities that we serve on a daily basis. One of the big things that we're going to be doing is updating our Venture app. Early next year, we will launch the latest version of our award-winning Venture app that will include, among its new features, a completely new look, door-to-door trip planning, and a host of usability improvements. The upgrade will also include the first step of a Divvy ride bike sharing application integrated into CTA's app that will allow for trip planning with the Divvy bikes as part of your planning process for trips that you may take on CTA. We'll also be receiving the first of our new Proterra all-electric buses early next year. This will obviously be the first step towards the commitment that I have made to move to an all-electric bus fleet. To support those new electric buses, we'll also be completing installation of our first fast charging stations at Chicago and Austin and at Navy Pier that will serve the first route that will receive these new electric buses, which will be the number 66 Chicago Avenue route. We're also investing in new bus technology, and we'll be releasing a new procurement in the coming weeks that will install advanced connected vehicle technology called active detection collision avoidance throughout our entire bus fleet. This investment will support the deployment of active sensing technology that will improve the safety and help bus travel be more efficient on our streets. Additionally, we'll continue to pilot the information screens on our buses that show upcoming bus stops and transfer information and service alerts. I should point out that the active detection collision avoidance system is really a way for our operators to be aware of pedestrians who are crossing in front of or near our buses and provide them with an early warning system to prevent pedestrian and vehicular collisions, something that I think will be appreciated not only by pedestrians but also by customers and our operators alike. In addition to that, we'll be piloting rear door bus boarding. We're going to build off the success that we had at the pilot that we did at the Belmont Blue Line station, and we'll be implementing the test of rear door boarding over the course of the next year as a way to improve both the quality as well as the speed of our bus service. That is an effort that we've recognized as one of the major opportunities that we have to improve our ridership and then particularly improve the speed of our buses. We're looking forward to really rolling that out in a number of areas of the city over the course of the next year, which you'll be hearing more about in the near future. We're also looking to make additional investments in what we call our Bus Priority Zone program. Mayor Lightfoot has announced this fall the city is earmarking $20 million to expand investments in our Bus Priority Zone program. This is basically a program that does things like put in curb cuts and other dedicated lanes along the existing street right-of-way system to allow our buses to move faster through certain corridors and certain portions of the city that we have identified as being choke zones for our buses. As you know, our bus ridership is one of our biggest challenges right now, and one of the reasons that's a challenge is because our buses operate in the same congestion that the cars operate in. Finding ways to speed up my bus service, whether it be through rear door boardings or whether it's through dedicated lanes and bus priority zones, allows us to provide a higher quality of service to our customers and a speedier service to our customers. It makes us much more competitive for the riders, customers and riders that we're trying to gain going forward. In addition, we'll be launching next year something that I've marketed or branded as Bus Vision 2020. That is going to be a comprehensive system analysis of our entire bus system that is intended to really make sure that we're providing bus services in the ways that make sense given the way the city operates today, given the mobility realities that we face today. It is going to be the first comprehensive review of the entire bus system of CTA in decades. And it's going to give us some real insight in terms of where we can basically take advantages of the opportunity to make sure our bus service is aligning with the needs of our customers and providing the quality service that our customers need and expect in order to both maintain our existing ridership and to help it grow. We also are going to be developing additional efforts to enhance employee training. The board just this month approved a contract that's going to expand our online training program and will allow us to basically improve not only the continuous learning opportunities for our employees, to put them in a better position to provide the level of service that we expect our customers to receive from our employees, but also provide multiple online training tools and management platforms for our employees. We'll specifically be looking to launch a new online platform to better support and manage certifications and continuous learning opportunities for our employees that will basically enhance customer service training programs. This new online platform will support more efficient applicant testing, and I'm also excited that it'll provide a new and more modern way for our employees to develop and grow individually and to support the overall mission of the agency as a whole. As you all know, workforce development is one of my primary goals as president, and this is going to be a major improvement in the way in which we can deliver those services to our employees. And finally, I'm also happy to announce that beginning next week, we will begin employee testing of what is known as the virtual venture card that will be loaded onto the Apple Wallet in your iPhones. This pilot testing will begin the week of December 15th. The venture card will be then loaded onto an Apple Wallet and will be available to a number of CTA employees to allow us to fine-tune this new functionality to make sure that it works great for all of our customers across the whole system. Later in the year, we'll actually open it up to the entire public, and it will be, I think, one of the major innovations that CTA has ever undertaken. We will be the second transit system in the entire country to offer this type of feature to our customers, and it basically will turn your iPhone into a venture card. It will provide all the functionality that you currently have with your venture account and the venture app, including adding additional funds for transit benefits, employer passes, as well as account management online through our app and much more. It'll be a major step forward in the application of the venture card, and I think that it'll be something that our customers will be very excited about when it comes out to the public next year. I should also mention to you that we are currently working with Google to launch the additional wallet functionality on Android devices later next year as well. So both Google and Apple phones will be able to take advantage of this new innovation. So that's just a small list of the things that we're working on in terms of innovation for the upcoming year that I think our customers and the riding public will be excited to see and to hear, but also an opportunity for us to continue to deal with the challenges that we're facing in this new mobility ecosphere to make sure that CTA remains competitive and an option of choice for our customers, not only for next year, but for many years in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dorval. Appreciate that update and also sharing what we can look forward to. I have one new business item that I added to the agenda, and I just want to tell Dorval, don't bring it on staff, don't blame staff. It's hard to get anything past Karen, Nora, and Veronica, so I didn't do this until the board meeting started. But I wanted to bring to everyone's attention that our very own Dorval Carter last Thursday on December the 5th, I was there, Director Rosales was there, Director Irvine was there, former Director Jackie Grimshaw was there, where he received the Motorola Solution Foundation Excellence in Public Service Award for over 34 years of service in the public sector. And for those of you who don't know about the award, the Civic Federation and the Motorola Solution Foundation honors a non-elected government official who has had an extraordinary impact on the quality of the state and local government services in Illinois. And I think, as you just heard from President Carter, all of the things that we've been able to accomplish, but more importantly, what's coming. I think you would be excited. And again, I wanted to share this brief video with you that was shared at the presentation for those of you who didn't get a chance to see it and unable to attend, because I just wanted you to know how proud we are of him and how much we do appreciate him. So, Steve. As I said, trying to get some past Karen.
Dorval Carter is passionate about one thing: making life better for the city of Chicago. And once he's committed, he becomes viral. He actually passes that passion and belief to others.
People that work for Dorval like Dorval. He knows how to get the best out of everybody. He's an inspiration, there's no question about that.
He's a person who spent his life in public service. He's been a particularly effective leader at the CTA and done a job with dignity and grace, and he deserves this award.
President Carter is a kind, caring person.
Dorval Carter is passionate about one thing: making life better for the city of Chicago. And once he's committed, he becomes viral. He actually passes that passion and belief to others.
People that work for Dorval like Dorval. He knows how to get the best out of everybody. He's an inspiration, there's no question about that.
He's a person who spent his life in public service.
inspiring person who happens to be right this way. I'm so proud of you. That was just a snippet. Yeah, there you go. I was sharing with you.
I had a very upbringing and I spent a lot of time working in a family business. It's a skilled care nursing facility that was on the west side of the city. I did everything from scrubbing floors to changing bedpans. I began to appreciate and understand sort of the challenges that people face and the importance of people getting good public services. So the idea of providing service to the community is something that was sort of embedded in myself and the rest of my family from a very early age. I started at CTA right out of law school, my first job. The only thing I knew about transportation when I was young was that, buses were really cool. I never had any thought about going into the transportation sector. It really was a lucky opportunity that sort of created this path for me. Then I left CTA and went to work for the U.S. Department of Transportation, and I was the regional counsel. Then I went to Washington, D.C. I became assistant chief counsel for legislation and regulation, and I did that for about a year and a half before I was recruited to come back to CTA. It was my first time working in a non-legal position. Fell in love with the freedom that I had and performed that job for about 6 years before I had the opportunity to become a political appointee in the Obama administration.
Dorval was our first and only choice to become administrator of Federal Transit Administration, and he knew what he was doing day one. We moved from working for the transit administrator to becoming transit administrator to becoming deputy chief of staff. You don't move in those circles unless you're talented.
Magnificent hub of America's great Midwest.
When Mayor Emanuel became mayor after serving as chief of staff for President Obama, he called me and he said, I need the very best person I can get to run the CTA. And I said, well, there's only one person, Dorval Carter.
And the mayor basically suggested that I'd been spending my whole career preparing to become president of the CTA. And now it's time for me to come home. I don't even know if I can describe how it feels to be back. CTA is very much like a family. I was a product of this family. And so I feel a tremendous amount of pride and a tremendous amount of responsibility as someone who's been given the gift to take care of and to help this organization grow, and to be able to be in a position where you can really influence that is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
30 years have prepared him for this moment. Dorval is an incredible listener. He's able to take complex situations and information and put them in layman's terms. And those are two characteristics that I think in a leader that's hard to come by, but Dorval is excellent at that.
You talk to people about sort of your roots, what grounds you. My father was a doctor. One of the hospitals that my father worked at was St. Anthony's Hospital. I'm passionate about transportation. I live for what I can do at CTA, but my work at St. Anthony's is what grounds me.
He's vice chairman of the board. His passion, both within the hospital and out in the communities, are very evident. Even when Dorval was recruited to Washington, he was always at this hospital to make every board meeting, every event, and that's the way he is in his job and everything else he's committed to within the city of Chicago.
And I think that family commitment to service probably carried over to him and his generation, and he surely devoted his life to public service. And we're very grateful to him for that good work.
I don't have any doubt that I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for my family and the support that I've gotten from them. And when I look back at the jobs that I've held and the things I've got to do in those jobs, I realize that I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. I'm thankful to all. I really want to thank the Civic Federation for the Excellence in Public Service Award. It's a tremendous honor, and I'm very humbled to receive it.
This is well overdue, and I'm finally glad to be able to sit in front of this camera and congratulate you.
Dorval, congratulations.
My congratulations to Dorval Carter for receiving this award from the Civic Federation.
Congratulations, Dorval. It's a combination of all of your years in transit and as an incredible, awesome public servant.
So you can see why I didn't want that moment to pass. As I said to Dorval, you hear about all of the things he's been involved in over the past 30-some years, but you very rarely understand the gravitas of all the opportunities and honors and that he's been involved in. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the only person in this room that has known Dorval from his first day here is Director Chevrolet. As you heard in the video,
Right.
she was here when Dorval got out of law school at Howard, and he actually worked for her. And so I just thought it was just an incredible journey, and I wanted to share that journey with you. As I said, it was tough, really tough. I got to give April and Steve and Brian credit trying to keep something away from Karen, Nora, and Veronica, because they're on it. So with that being said, Greg, is there any further business to come before the board?
No, just congratulating Vita for getting that thing done. She's the jack of all trades.
Exactly.
That's it.
All right. Well, let me just say this before we adjourn. I just want to wish everyone happy holidays. And if God's willing, I'll see you in 2020. With that being said, with no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you and happy holidays.
Thank you.